Hi, I'm Dr. Shiloh.
And I'm Dr. Scott.
And this is LA Not So Confidential, the forensic psychology and true crime podcast.
Each week, we explore the intersection of psychology, the criminal justice system, and entertainment.
Today, our episode is on the forensic psych topic of road rage.
Hey, folks, welcome back. If you didn't stick around at the end of our last couple of episodes, just a heads up that on the evening of Friday, September 22nd, we're doing a watch party of the disaster film Supercell with our friends from Tenish and Doomsday Pod. All of the details and instructions are linked in the show notes and will be on social media. Please join us. It's not just for Patreon members, it's for everyone. It's going to be a big deal. We're going to have a blast. Please show up.
Yes. I mean, Alec Baldwin and Anne Heche are in it, so it's probably going to be terrible in the best way.
Right.
So last week we brought you the vintage case of the mysterious death of Hollywood actress Thelma Todd. She was a different sort of starlet who made the successful transition from the silent films to the talkies and didn't put up with any of that casting couch BS. She also went into the restaurant business, which brought its own unique struggles before she was found dead in the garage on the hill above the restaurant. Was it a mob hit, or was it an intentional or unintentional taking of her own life? We explore it all in episode 155, so please go back and give that one a listen.
So to completely take a right-hand turn.
I see what you're doing there.
180 degrees, yes. A right-hand turn with not using signals, because that's what would piss me off. Our episode this week is on the phenomenon of road rage, which, interestingly enough, has a lot of research behind it, as we have become more of a mobile society since the advent of more people owning their own private transportation. So trigger warnings before we even get into the bits and pieces. We do have a couple of incidents where children lost their lives as a result of road rage and the use of gun violence.
Yes. In the summer of 2021, the Southern California area was gripped by the senseless, tragic case of road rage that took the life of 6-year-old Aiden Leos. While driving her son to kindergarten on the 55 freeway in Riverside County, Aiden's mother was involved in some sort of altercation with another driver. The other driver opened fire on her car, and Aiden, seated in his booster seat, started crying that his tummy hurt. He had been struck by a bullet and passed away the next morning from his injuries. This was an extremely high-profile case here in the Southland, with sobbing family members on our TV screens every morning. Also, just very eerie imagery of investigators shutting down the freeways as they walk in a straight line, step by step, looking for evidence. And nearly 2 weeks later, 2 suspects were finally arrested: Marcus Anthony Ares, 24 years old, and Win Lee, 23 years old.
So Ares was accused of Aiden Leos' murder, and his girlfriend Lee is accused of being an accessory after the fact. Police investigators testified at the trial that Ares and Lee got into a road rage incident with Aiden's mother on the freeway. Aiden's mother, Joanna Clunan, was taking her child to kindergarten at approximately 8 a.m. when she was cut off by the defendants. Lee, who was driving the car, allegedly diverted her car over and out of the diamond lane into the fast lane. Diamond lane is it's an HOV out here, high occupancy
carpool
vehicle. Yeah, carpool lane. So they have double white lines, which means you can really only move between those 2 lanes at certain intervals, because people are traveling at a really high rate of speed. It's very dangerous to go in and out of those lanes. But Lee diverted her car over and out of that diamond lane into the fast lane and then punched the gas, pulling in front of Clunan. Lee then made a peace sign to Clunan, or as my husband calls it, the magic hand. Like, hey, I'm going to give you like a little insipid wave to let you know that everything's okay with what I just fucking did to you while driving, right? So Clunan was then further north as she continued her drive. She maneuvered her car to merge toward the eastbound Riverside 91 freeway so that she can continue her travel to her son's kindergarten. Clunan ended up passing the defendants who had cut her off, and she did what's very common here in Southern California. She flipped them off. She gave the middle finger, to which Ares responded by firing a shot into the rear of Clunan's vehicle. Ares and Lee were captured after numerous tips about the suspect car came in, and they are still awaiting trial, and their next hearing is at the end of this month. as of September 2023.
Yeah. And I think I miswrote that at the beginning of what you read. It was the preliminary trial. It wasn't the trial that we got all of this information out of. So yeah, this is absolutely still something that is gripping the Southland and that we will be watching closely because of just the incredibly sad nature of it.
Yeah.
So thankfully, the surge in gun violence during the peak of the COVID pandemic in the United States is finally on the decline, and 2022 was marked as the first year with fewer gun homicides than the preceding year since the pandemic began. However, one concerning aspect of gun violence is on the rise: incidents of road rage shootings resulting in deaths and injuries. Encounters with aggressive driving on the road are not uncommon, with approximately 8 in 10 drivers reporting at least one such incident in the month prior to a survey conducted by the AAA Foundation for Traffic Safety found. And the presence of firearms can escalate these encounters significantly. And studies by self-report surveys conducted initially in Arizona and then later nationwide reveal that motorists with a firearm in their vehicle were more likely to engage in rude or aggressive behavior and exhibit road rage, such as making obscene gestures or just plain old dangerous driving.
So Everytown Research and Policy analyzed data from the Gun Violence Archive showing a continuous increase in road rage injuries and deaths involving firearms since 2018. In 2018, there were at least 70 road rage shooting deaths in the United States, doubling to 141 in 2022. Now, similarly, gun-related injuries and road rage incidents rose from at least 176 in 2018 to 413 in 2022. This translates to a person being shot and either injured or killed in a road rage incident approximately every 16 hours in 2022. States like New Mexico, Arizona, Oklahoma, Tennessee, and Wisconsin experienced the highest rates of people shot in road rage incidents, despite accounting for only 8% of the U.S. population. So that constitutes 20% of road rage shooting victims. This disparity extended to geographic regions within the southern United States, known for having less stringent gun laws on average, witnessing double the victimization rates compared to the Northeast, which has stronger gun regulations. Who could possibly have known that that would have any effect? Right?
Yeah, let's dive into this a little bit more. And as a proud concealed carry permit and responsible concealed carry permit holder, this is really important to look at, and just we'll let these numbers speak for themselves. Examining one specific gun policy, the rules governing concealed carry of firearms in public, reveals a clear association with road rage incidents. States with looser concealed carry permit requirements, including those without any permit mandate, had significantly higher rates of road rage shootings resulting in injuries or deaths. Permitless states had nearly triple the victimization rate compared to states with more protective standards. Furthermore, permitless states experience 27% more road rage deaths and injuries involving firearms than states requiring a permit, but not granting broad authority to deny applications. So something recent happened in the last year or so. And in June 2022, the U.S. Supreme Court made a historic ruling that prohibits states from requiring quote unquote good cause justification for concealed carry permits, which will, of course, make everything better.
Of course. More guns.
No, actually, it aggravates this issue, potentially leading to more road rage incidents. So again, that prior to that ruling, you needed to explain your good cause, your justification as to why you should be granted this extreme privilege of having a concealed carry permit, right? Like, I have a business that transport a lot of money back and forth to the bank, something like that. You had to write basically an essay on it. And that was so here in California. And then when you sit down with your investigator from the law enforcement agency that is investigating you to see if you are going to get this permit and then gives you the permit, you have to basically articulate this in person with them. And the fact that that is gone now and they don't have to ask, I will say I renewed since then, and they do ask. They still ask here in California, like, well, so why do you think you need this? It's not just a like, oh, okay, here's an application. Your criminal record's great, stamp, here, you approve it. So that made me feel better that they're at least still asking about it, because it's still up to their discretion. But people can fight it, I guess, if they get turned down now based on this Supreme Court ruling. So significantly, states that weakened their permitting systems also saw a 13 to 15% increase in overall crime rates. This analysis underscores the correlation between lax gun carrying regulations and the rise of road rage shootings.
Fascinating stuff. Yeah. But I mean, not unsurprising at all. I mean, there's a big duh, but what's more interesting to me is how, a reasonable individual, wherever they are politically, is going to go, yeah, this is going to be a problem. We got to fix this. And then there's going to be the people that just, I want what I want and I want it right now. And I want to be able to carry my gun with me.
Well, and, they're really good. If you go to, when you're doing your classes for concealed carry permits, if you go to a good place, they will tell you, this is not a time for you to now say, oh, I'm carrying a gun. I can be more brazen and an asshole out there on the road because, hey, now I can protect myself. Quite the opposite. They will say the amount of responsibility that you now carry, you need to be thinking twice, 3 times, 4 times, 5 times of if you're actually going to use this, because the amount of it, just the position you put yourself in, not only to potentially take someone's life, but the civil liability, the fact that you might go to prison, all of these things that you need to think about that will be of extreme consequence to yourself should have you being the most calm person in a situation.
Yeah, I remember a really startling example that happened not while I was living in Alabama. It was probably close to 15 years ago. But I went to undergrad at a college called Birmingham Southern College. And it's in this area of Birmingham that is off of an exit called Arkadelphia Road. And it's sort of, Birmingham is one of the only big metropolitan areas in Alabama, although there are 2 other cities that are rapidly growing. But there's just a lot of intense travel in this network of intersecting highways that's right there, used to be on the edge of town and now is sort of firmly situated in town. And I remember there were 2 separate drivers. There were women with children in their SUVs. And for some reason, they began playing chicken on a very densely traveled freeway through one of the largest metro areas in that city. And I think one of them basically kind of tapped out and was like, well, this is bullshit. I've got kids in the car. I got to be careful. So she pulls off the road but the damage is already done. And the other car pulls off as well, parks in front of her to confront her, jumps out of the car armed, like walking with her gun towards the first person who pulled off. So the first woman now grabs under her seat, grabs her gun, and just fully shoots her in the chest, killing her, fatal shooting in front of both of their SUVs full of their kids.
Jesus.
Terrible, terrible incident. And it's interesting. It's very hard to find any news about this. I remember I used to actually, for years, I kept an article about it. And it's, for some reason, it is now, I'm not saying that it's intentionally been buried in Google searches, but it's I have not been able to find it again. So I've now got to dig through my archive files to find that Birmingham News report on it. But yeah, that's how it can go badly so quickly.
Yeah. So the woman who actually got out, was approaching the car, she's the one that died because the other one pulled out her gun in self-defense. Yeah. It looks like. Okay. Gosh, horrific. So how do we actually define road rage? The term has been around quite a while, especially out here on the West Coast where cars are king. And that is a whole other story unto itself, which we've covered, especially in our pursuit talk, and much better told by watching Roger Rabbit than listening to us, which I just watched with my daughter for the first time recently. Well, her first time, obviously. But there's so much talk about the car taking over life in Southern California at that time. And also our local news station, KTLA, has been researched and found to be the originator of the term. How about that?
Amazing. Yeah.
We love them. So road rage is a phenomenon that is characterized by notable aggressive and violent behavior exhibited by drivers on the road. It can span from the feelings of irritability and anger that the driver experiences without behavioral change, all the way to exhibition of significant and dangerous behavior in interactions with other drivers. Road rage has become a prevalent issue in today's world as we've moved further away from mass transportation.
So Stephanie Buck, who is a journalist for Medium, wrote in a 2017 article entitled "Road Rage was invented 30 years ago this summer in LA when gunplay came to the freeways." And her article is about what took place in 1987 following the deaths of 11 individuals due to traffic aggression incidents. The LA Times at that time coined this term called highway hostility, which is pretty good alliteration there, but it didn't catch on as well as road rage would a few years later. But Southern California already knew that this wasn't a new thing. And as Buck writes in an early 1970s survey that was taken by Salt Lake City, Utah residents, they could gladly kill another driver.
In Salt Lake City? Jesus.
Wow. Talk about like repressing,
what would it have been in New York?
Well, no, I mean, I think that there's a lot of like what happens in the anonymity of a survey, right? A self-report survey. So the history of road rage in America dates back to the early 20th century, clearly coinciding with the emergence of widespread individual use of automobiles. As more people gained access to cars, the roads became crowded and drivers began to experience frustrations with traffic congestion, poorly thought out or completely underdeveloped infrastructure, and the lack of government entities understanding and addressing these needs. So when this phenomenon was first noticed, and long before it was given the name, it was primarily limited to aggressive driving behaviors like speeding and tailgating, and it was believed to be primarily driven by those frustrations caused by congested roads in metropolitan areas and that inadequate infrastructure that stemmed from an exponential growth in these areas. So there's also this sharp influence of this buy aspect of the Western economy that dovetailed with America's growing cultural emphasis on individualism and entitlement. So interesting how many of our previous episodes continue to merge together thematically, right? So we're talking about, I get to do what I want to do because I'm, American. Or like, and also it was that kind of it's interesting that this whole car thing, as you find out in Roger Rabbit, was really forced on us by the oil industry and the tire industry, because up until that time, Southern California, Los Angeles had like this incredibly comprehensive trolley car system.
Yeah, it was working great.
It was working great. Nobody needed a car. And they were like, we can make some money off this. So, and it's saying, in the last part of the 20th century, and boy, that feels weird to say the last part of the 20th century. But this is when road rage escalated into a significantly more menacing problem.
So the findings of a study conducted on behalf of the National Highway Traffic Safety Administration evaluated the impact of two initiatives aimed at reducing incidents of quote unquote aggressive driving. In their study, they defined road rage as encompassing actions such as tailgating, excessive speeding, weaving through traffic, and disregarding traffic signals and signs, as well as other behaviors. Now, to me, that just sounds like aggressive driving. That doesn't sound like road rage necessarily. It just like someone, that person that is always weaving in and out and gets there. I think the studies show they get there like 4 minutes ahead of everyone else if you really like broke it down. Totally wasted energy. Road rage can also include verbal outbursts and gestures. However, these would not be classified as necessarily criminal offenses. So now we start seeing how the interaction is with other drivers, but not quite to that criminal level yet. Accounts of road rage incidents coincide with a notable rise in aggressive driving overall, coupled with a significant decline in respect for other drivers and adherence to the traffic laws. The AAA Foundation for Traffic Safety analyzed over 10,000 reported road rage cases, and they found a 51% increase in serious incidents between 1990 and 1996. A national survey revealed that 60% of drivers viewed unsafe driving by others as a major personal threat to themselves and their families, with 75% considering it very important to address unsafe driving. And I think this is something we all come away from, whether we're in fear for our own safety or, if you have kids driving or older parents driving, where you might not be worried about them, you're worried about the other assholes on the road.
Yeah. Exactly. I mean, the good thing that comes out of all of these incidents is that now it's becoming a scientific study, and not just now, but like within the last 2 decades. So it's really necessary to look closely at these claims of substantial increases in aggressive driving and road rage to see if they fit criteria. I mean, is the increase in incidents based on criminal filings or new reports? Because if it's news reports, is the increase due to the focus of the reporters or the journalists' decisions on what they're covering that week, or what there isn't anything to cover, so let's cover this, right? What's getting the priority? Because even when looking at the study that estimates 10,000 road rage cases during the first 6 years of the 1990s, the incidents remain relatively low when compared to the number of injuries and fatalities on the United States roads and highways. So during that same period, more than 22.7 million people were injured in motor vehicle accidents in the US, and over 290,000 people lost their lives. So road rage cases accounted for just 4% of the total number of traffic related injuries or deaths, or one road rage case for every 2,300 injuries and fatalities. But here's the problem. That data is very old. It's now 20 years old. We consider that in the community to be, it's interesting, it's notable, but it is not accurate given everything that's changed in our culture in those 2 decades. So that fledgling phenomenon that was only at 4% appears to have increased a lot. So that old data suggests that road rage was a relatively minor traffic safety issue then, despite the extensive news coverage and its general prominence. But clearly a lot has changed in the last 2 decades.
Yeah, as well as just traffic safety in general too. So, I mean, you're kind of comparing apples and oranges. It's
right.
Like accidents, but then this is deliberate, which is the opposite of an accident. There's also probably road rage incidents that result in accidents. So now you have something that's kind of a crossover. And where's that being captured in the data?
Right.
The decade that really provided the turning point for the perception of and attention to road rage was definitely the 1980s. So moving back even a little bit further, road rage incidents then began including incidents of road rage involving physical violence like assaults and shootings. The other factor was news coverage, as we've talked about in several previous episodes. The emergence of that 24-hour news cycle contributed to the illumination and focus on any high risk, escalating, or sexy criminal acts. So of course, road rage started making headlines. Again, breaking down factors. Congestion is first and foremost, even from the early 20th century. The building of roads and bridges without careful consideration led to more delays in travel. The building of bridges into Manhattan is a fascinating study of this phenomenon and is part of a phenomenon we call induced demand. It also occurs when additional lanes are added to freeways. At first, these measures speed up transit because people keep up their travel patterns, but over time, there are diminishing returns. More highways, more tunnels, more bridges, but also increased gridlock and increased stress levels among drivers because somehow there are always more people and cars to fill those lanes.
Yeah, it's a phenomenon that has been noted all around the world.
Yep.
And, you'll see highways in China that literally have close to 30 lanes and they're all gridlocked.
That's crazy.
As we move farther and farther away from comprehensive and successful mass transit. I love when Dan was working on Hunger Games and I spent a week in Berlin. I was like, this is amazing. Like you just literally step on a bus and like 4 stops your way. I mean, it was even better than Chicago, which is very comprehensive as well. But like everything was clean. And anyway, I'm a huge public transportation fan. I wish I had the opportunity to take it here.
Right,
when it's done right, it's great.
Yeah.
LA has a long way to go. They're working on it, but they have a long way to go. So we have to also look at the factor of media sensationalism. High profile cases of road rage incidents captured the attention of the media from the very beginning, right? 24-hour news cycle, capturing the attention of the media. You got something to put on there, as we've talked about in our chase episodes. So this amplifies the perception that road rage is this growing menace, and the media's portrayal of those incidents contributed to public awareness, which is good, and concern, which can be good or bad depending on how it's portrayed. But other than a talking point, however, does road rage really have an impact on our culture? Well, it turns out that when we look at the number of these incidents happening and how they impact families of victims and perpetrators, families, as well as collateral damage to any and all other involved parties, road rage is seen to really have some pretty severe consequences, including injuries, fatalities, and emotional trauma for everyone involved. High-profile cases have drawn attention to the issue, and the steady increase has prompted calls from across the U.S. for legislation and public awareness campaigns. The movement towards enacting legislation includes stricter penalties for aggressive driving and road rage incidents with the goal of holding perpetrators accountable. It's so interesting because there's a phenomenon that's happening more in the Pacific Northwest. It's happened a few times in Texas, but in the Pacific Northwest, there's a lot of these reported about the rolling coal incidents where people who are more on the troll side of it will take their jacked up trucks and they'll modify them so that there is no filter, so that all of the exhaust basically is just put out with no filter. It's a legal modification.
I'm like, what?
But then they take it to the next step where they put a burner so that the exhaust gets burned a second time and creates these enormous black clouds of toxic grease. And it started getting reported on about 8 years ago, as soon as hybrids and electric cars were becoming popular.
God,
so this was the way they could say, fuck you to, newer technologies. And all I could think was like, that's a dumb mistake to make, because just because somebody's driving a Prius doesn't mean they don't have a gun in their car. That's really dumb.
True. Yeah, absolutely. So in the vein of looking at different places, how does the United States compare to the rest of the world when it comes to these incidents? Road rage definitely has emerged around the world, but the history and timeline varies from region to region based on a number of factors. So first, there are cultural differences from our own peculiar America personalities.
Right.
Road rage often reflects cultural norms and values. As we referred to earlier, in the United States, the car is seen as an extension of individual freedom, contributing to, unfortunately, what is a more aggressive driving culture. And while there are certainly other cars and cultures that value or fixate on car culture, the United States has taken it to the extreme in how much of the population is invested or identified with their cars. The fixation goes way, way beyond function and more into form and presentation. Many are invested in what their car says about them. In contrast, some European countries prioritize courtesy and cooperation on the road, resulting in fewer road rage incidents, even where there are significantly higher speed limits. As culture in America has continued to shift to self-centricity and entitlement, people expect their needs and desires to take precedence over their peers on the road. So it's like we're in our own little special bubble in our car, and that has cut us off essentially from the humanity of being in this like journey on the road together with other humans.
Yes. And we are coming back to that because that parallels with sort of being anonymous or seeing yourself as anonymous in other situations as well. So another factor based or sort of piggybacking on what you were saying, countries like India and Russia, they've also witnessed a large surge in road rage incidents with this significant foundation of overcrowded and poorly maintained networks of highways, roads, and infrastructure. And Russian dash cam footage on YouTube is like on a completely different level. Like it's like something out of what's that whole series, a Final Destination. It's like Final Destination movies. Totally. But interestingly enough, the legislative action in other countries has moved much faster than in the US. And that's probably because our individual states each hold so many rights. And it's not just a federal blanket that you can do. In other countries, their version of federal laws are much more defined. In Japan, for example, aggressive driving can result in hefty fines and even suspension. And while the United Kingdom introduced careless driving laws to penalize road rage behavior. So we've talked about the entitlement and some of the other factors that contribute to road rage, but what does this tell us about the why?
Well, frustration and aggression are the big drivers here. That was a good double entendre. But also it's the mistake of thinking that only a few people fall prey to their more base emotions. But it is complex. Our work-centered culture becomes integrated into our sense of self. I mean, we have employers demanding more and more from workers, including longer work hours. And if you're living in a large metropolitan area, you're likely to have a commute as part of your daily life. As drivers experience delays, their frustration levels rise, and this heightened emotional state can lead to aggressive behaviors. The general aggression model proposed by Anderson and Bushman in 2002 really emphasizes that frustration is a potential trigger for aggression. This model is a comprehensive, integrative framework for understanding aggression, and it considers the role of many factors in how aggression manifests in individuals. And these factors are things like social, cognitive, personality, developmental, and biological dynamics. This general aggression model posits that exposure to frustrating situations like traffic congestion can activate aggressive thoughts, emotions, and behaviors. So while everyone can experience these factors, having a model like this helps us understand why some individuals are just more prone to road rage incidents than others.
So building on that and going back 2 ideas ago is that idea of anonymity and also this concept of de-individuation. We've talked in previous episodes about the disinhibiting influence that the computer screen will give online trolls. There's a similar phenomenon that occurs when driving that includes the factors of anonymity and de-individuation. So the anonymity provided by being enclosed within that vehicle in that little metal, glass, and plastic bubble. And these days in Southern California, you're also likely to have blacked out windows. Well, all of that can play a pivotal role in escalating road rage incidents. And then de-individuation, where the driver is paralleled with individuals in a crowd or anonymous setting, like a groupthink. That driver may act in ways that they wouldn't in a non-anonymous situation. So within the context of road rage, the isolation within a car can lead to a sense of detachment from otherwise more closely adhered to social norms. Like, I would never drive this way, down the street to McDonald's. That's not likely to happen, but I'll do it on the road when there's 500 other people going 85 miles an hour. Again, like the online troll, a driver may do things on the road in their expression of aggression in that situation. And thirdly, provocation by other drivers is another critical psychological factor contributing to road rage. So Keisler and Keisler in the Journal of Personality and Social Psychology provided a study that shows that the perceived disrespect or perceived provocation from other drivers can trigger aggressive responses. So whether or not they're being aggressive or not, if you perceive them as being aggressive, that can have just as much play in your emotional reaction. When a driver perceives another driver's actions as disrespectful, as inappropriate, as dismissive or offensive, they're more likely to feel a need to retaliate. So a strong drive for retaliation easily escalates these kind of situations.
Yeah. So it's like the old, you're walking down the street and someone kind of shoulder checks you, and then you start creating your own narrative behind that. Was it a mistake, an accident that they just didn't realize how close they were to you? Was it on purpose because they wanted to show you who was boss or who owns the sidewalk? What's really going on? But I think we take in a lot of stimuli on the road to kind of put that narrative together. What does their car look like? What are the stickers on their car? What are they wearing? Who do they look like? It's hard to kind of sit back and go, I'm just going to give them the benefit of the doubt. Maybe that was on accident.
Yeah.
But all the things that go on in our minds every single day in these commutes. So of all of these factors across the spectrum, it appears that the main motivator is going to be a constellation of individual differences that make certain individuals more prone to road rage. The 2015 issue of the Journal of Accident Analysis and Prevention outlined the personality traits that were found in aggressive drivers over a number of incidents. So we have impulsivity, sensation seeking, and hostility, which were
not surprising at all.
No,
not surprising.
Yeah, which are associated already with higher likelihood of aggressive driving behavior. And I mean, what sort of the population do we think is more likely to have engaged in those types of behaviors?
Hey, are you going to profile?
I am. So the factors that increase individuals' susceptibility to road rage are most commonly associated with young males.
Yeah.
That's why their insurance policies are so high. Environmental conditions such as congested roads, which we know is obviously a contributor to aggravation while you're driving. But psychological factors such as displaced anger and elevated life stress are shown to contribute to road rage. And research has revealed a higher likelihood of alcohol and drug misuse among individuals experiencing road rage. So it's not just what's happening in the moment, it's what's lying beneath the surface.
Absolutely. Absolutely. That's again, I'm just glad that this is actually being studied so that you can look at all these different factors and how they might interplay with each other. So continuing on, and this study is Deffenbacher is a researcher who's done a lot of work in this area on aggression and driving, identifies 5 key differences between what are delineated as high anger and low anger drivers. So high anger drivers engage in hostile, aggressive thinking, and they often express disbelief about others' driving abilities, and then they seek revenge. So I don't know. I just feel like, oh my God, I'm diagnosing myself because I'll be the first one of, you
clutching your pearls. Oh, how could they do that to me? I
can't believe you're so awful. So these high anger individuals take more risks on the road as well, such as speeding and tailgating. And high anger drivers get angry very quickly and act aggressively and engage in things like swearing, yelling, and honking. Interesting for me, like I will have that big reaction of like, what a word, how could you do that? And then I'll completely like go, this is awful. I'm going to actually I'll start driving like more slowly and pull into the slow lanes just to like de-escalate myself. So these high anger drivers have twice as many car accidents and simulations, and they report more near accidents, and they receive statistically more speeding tickets. Short fused drivers experience more anger, more anxiety, and more impulsivity.
I would love to be a researcher who takes these people identified this way, and you're like now putting them in driving simulations just to watch them.
I know, like Grand Theft Auto or something.
Yes. Man, there's some great research jobs out there.
I know.
So while some drivers experience road rage, less than 2% engage in serious threats or violence. Road conditions and individual differences in temperament and environment are something that we have learned today that contribute to road rage. And combining cognitive and relaxation techniques has shown promise in reducing road rage among high anger drivers. Therapy involving relaxation and cognitive strategies can help individuals control their anger while driving and maintain improvements in the long term. So using it both preventatively and then as an intervention seem to be working. And for example, one study reported a 64% reduction in aggressive driving behaviors and psychological distress among participants who received treatment. It's wonderful. All right. So moving on to our criminal cases, when I just simply Googled road rage murder, I got so many results. It was kind of astounding for even just like the research we do. I mean, I got one that was like 4 hours old, a story that was 5 days old, one that was 10 hours ago. Like, I mean, and this, I just glanced over them, of course, before picking what we have here. But I mean, the suspect pool varied widely. Men, women, teens, the elderly, all ethnicities and races. I mean, like when you started out with that story in Alabama, I mean, I was a little shocked to hear this was between 2 women, but there are some.
You also wonder what the factor is that was it the presence of them feeling like they were armed? Like having gun in the car, like disinhibits them. I mean, I don't know, but I wouldn't be surprised if it had some impact. And it takes us back to the first case that we presented with Erez and Wynn, or Erez and Lee. Mm-hmm. That's like what happened that this young woman driving the car got flipped off, and then she took action, or her boyfriend sitting in the passenger seat decided that just feels like very substance influenced behavior to me.
Yeah. He was on probation already, I believe, because I remember reading more into the story of his probation officer, I believe, talking about how he had changed his appearance like right after, they were trying to hide out and stuff like that. So I don't know what he was on probation for, but yeah, I hear what you're saying. So let's get into this first case. And on September 9th in 2013, a family was caught up in a really terrifying situation. The parents were driving in their Range Rover with their 2-year-old daughter in the back seat when the road was overtaken by a group of bikers who were participating in what was called the Hollywood Bike Party, although this took place in New York. But hundreds of bikers were participating in antics such as running red lights, stopping traffic to do stunts and risky maneuvers. And the family found themselves surrounded by the bikers and essentially forced to stop with and bikers a little bit different in terms of like they are right there. There's not a car that they have to sort of yell through. It's much more personal. They can get closer to your vehicle, all of that. So the bikers were yelling and acting aggressively towards them. And in the trial of this case, the wife recalls telling her husband, who was driving, just go, just go. And she said, in my mind, we needed to get out of there, that we were not going to survive. It just felt like it was really escalating. And her husband, as a result, made some movements to get out of the traffic jam, ends up hitting a motorcycle that stopped in front of him, and then in his panic moves forward and ends up running into some of the other bikers, severely injuring one biker. And at this point, they have a flat tire on their vehicle. They continue for as long as that flat tire takes them, trying to find a police station. But then the chase was on from the bikers, and their vehicle basically becomes disabled. The bikers just completely surround their car and are bashing the windows out with their helmets. They drag the husband out of the car, beating him in the street. They tried pulling the wife out, but she fought back and they couldn't undo her seatbelt, and they sort of walk away from that. And then she crawls to the back seat to shelter her baby, who had just shattered glass all over her, until, finally the bikers take off and authorities arrive. But there was a really interesting twist in this whole case in the aftermath.
Yeah, brutal case. Very memorable for that image of the driver's seat window being bashed out with the helmet. So related to this case, back in 2015 in New York City, former NYPD detective Brazicek was sentenced to 2 years in city jail for his involvement in the biker gang assault on the West Side Highway. You see, Brazicek, a former undercover NYPD narcotics detective, was undercover with a group of bikers at the time, and he ended up being found guilty in June of 2015 of second-degree assault, coercion, and criminal mischief stemming from that motorcycle altercation that occurred in September of 2013. Brazicek was accused of pursuing the SUV driver named Alexin Lean, smashing the SUV's rear window, and that was what caused Lean's wife and baby to be showered with shards of broken glass. He was not charged with physically assaulting Lean or intervening to stop the attack. Brazicek received concurrent 1-year sentences for assault and coercion and an additional 1-year sentence for criminal mischief related to the broken SUV window. Consequently, he was sentenced to a total of 2 years in jail. State Supreme Court Judge Maxwell Wiley characterized Brazicek's action as driven by revenge and stated that he contributed to terrorizing the victims and damaging property.
Yeah. So although Brazicek could have faced a maximum sentence of 7 years, the judge acknowledged his lack of participation in the assault and his 13 years of service as an officer, granting him some leniency. The district attorney had requested a 3.5-year sentence. Brazicek's attorney had sought leniency, advocating for probation and emphasizing the dangers of incarcerating a police officer, particularly one who had worked undercover.
Yeah.
And the type of city jail where Brazicek will serve his sentence, such as Rikers Island, Manhattan Detention Complex, or Brooklyn House, all of those could be potentially very dangerous for somebody who's a former police officer. So this case marked the 11th conviction in the incident, which unfolded on Manhattan's West Side Highway. 9 other bikers had previously pleaded guilty. So during Brazicek's trial, he testified that he pursued Lean's SUV because Lean was attempting to flee after colliding with a biker. He further stated that he refrained from intervening in the assault due to concerns for his safety. Brazicek also admitted to lying to his superiors about his involvement out of fear for losing his job. Robert Sims, a co-defendant in the case, is scheduled for sentencing on the following day. The incident was largely documented through cell phone videos, GoPro footage, and images, as no witnesses, including the victims, could identify a specific defendant during the trial. So I think this is so fascinating because little do we hear about officers working at undercover capacity being convicted for a crime, whether or not they feel like they sort of have to participate to keep their undercover persona intact, really. But it sounds like he went above and beyond. It's hard to say, but it's very easy to be a, Monday morning quarterback. It's football.
Yeah, football, one of those things with the things, not the one with the sticks, right? No, but it makes me think. I think of several things. One is that if you're undercover, then you're undercover.
Yeah.
You're not going to be chasing an SUV because they engaged in a crime. That to me is a completely bullshit excuse, right? I can get I can't, my impulse is to go and try and break up this guy getting the shit beat out of him. Maybe I could do it. Maybe I could yell, we're going to get in trouble, or you can't do this. Yeah. There are cameras everywhere. We got to get out of here. But his excuse seems really badly done. And then there's also the impulsivity, or what did you think you were doing when you broke out the window yourself?
Well, I mean, I could see him going, all right, if I'm going to be somewhat involved in this to show I'm part of this, biker group, I'm just going to go to town on a back window. So it doesn't look like, so I don't know. It's tough. Yeah. It would be really interesting to talk to someone who works undercover to see what they think about this do you kind of take the least serious amount of participation in a crime like this? But God, I mean, did he know that there was a little kid in the back? I mean, right. I just can't imagine the terror.
And also, why did it have to be him? It's a group of it's a huge group of bikers.
Hey,
why
did it have to be him? While you guys do your thing.
Or go and render aid to the person that's been injured or something. So there's a lot of questions there. Another case, this is out of the UK. So our next case occurred December 1st, 1996. A man visiting a friend in Alvechurch, Worcestershire, was alerted to a commotion outside his friend's home. He discovered the lifeless body of an individual named Lee Harvey in a roadside lay-by, and Harvey was soaked in blood, with his fiancée, Tracy Andrews, also covered in blood and screaming for help. Harvey had been brutally stabbed over 30 times and his throat was slashed, causing massive blood loss. Andrews later engaged with a press conference and provided a startlingly graphic account of the murder of her fiancé. She asserted that she and Harvey had been drinking in a pub near their home. The two then left together in Harvey's white Ford Escort RS 2000 Turbo. During their drive, they overtook a car that she described as a tatty, dark F registered Ford Sierra. So rather than just a freeway, Andrew stated that the incident occurred along a country road just a few miles from their shared home. Suspicion quickly fell on Andrews. Witnesses couldn't recall seeing the described chase at all, and questions rose about the timeline of the events. Friends and family described Andrews and Harvey's relationship as quote unquote tumultuous. 2 months before the murder, Andrews had been witnessed assaulting Harvey in a nightclub.
Oh. So despite being initially charged with murder, Andrews was released on bail, but continued to deny her involvement. She even appealed to the public for information about the real killer. Have we heard that before?
Yeah.
Did she write a book called If I Did It too? So during her trial in July 1997, the prosecution argued that Andrews had fabricated a fictional assailant. Evidence showed that there was no pursuing car, and witnesses contradicted Andrews' accounts. Andrew was found guilty of Harvey's murder and sentenced to life in prison with a minimum of 14 years. And in 1999, while serving her sentence, she confessed to the murder, stating that she had lost control during an argument and stabbed Harvey. She was released from prison in 2011, changed her name and appearance, and got married. The parents of Lee Harvey expressed their enduring pain, emphasizing that Andrews had completely ruined their lives, and there really shouldn't have been a second chance for Andrews because there was no second chance for their son.
Stabbed 30 times is quite brutal. Quite brutal.
And to think, okay, you were stabbed 30 times, or he was stabbed 30 times, but you came away unscathed from this driver.
Yeah, exactly.
Interesting. I wonder how much road rage was in the news back then in England, how much that fueled her story.
Yeah, probably something, I wouldn't be surprised if it was, you see the headline like, oh, that might be a good story for me to use.
Yeah.
So within the realm of entertainment, we have a couple of movies that portrayed road rage. Back in 2001, there was a movie entitled Joyride, starring Paul Walker, Steve Zahn, and Lily Sobieski. They start messing around with the CB radio, pranking truckers, and eventually they get the attention of a psychopathic truck driver whose radio handle is Rusty Nail.
Oh, scary.
And I know the film unfolds as the three friends desperately try to escape the clutches of this road rage driver who appears at times supernatural in his acts of vengeance. That's a great cast, especially Steve Zahn, who can literally do anything.
He's
that
so
guy is
funny.
so talented.
And whatever happened to Lily Sobieski? She was great. And where did she go? I didn't even think about her until we put this down.
I think the last thing I remember her doing was a remake of the movie Wicker Man with Nicolas Cage, and it was a really, really not good remake. But she's always great.
Shocking. And then, gosh, I mean, Paul Walker, right, in a car,
tragic.
or not a car, a film about road rage, and of course his other Fast and Furious legacy, and unfortunately his tragic death. But we do have also a 1971 thriller called Duel that was done by Steven Spielberg, which really laid the groundwork for other terrific road rage films Joyride. The Hitcher is another one. So in this story, when David Mann, played by Dennis Weaver, overtakes a rusty, smoke-expelling truck in his Plymouth Valiant, little does he know he's just set into motion a chilling battle to the death. It's always with truckers in these movies.
Yeah. It's like
open road.
And what's the harm? Jeepers Creepers that has the goblin, that demon that drives the truck.
Yes.
Which, by the way, how did that demon go to the trouble of getting a personalized license plate in Jeepers Creepers?
Oh, man.
Like,
that's a
somehow
great question.
You're only coming out every 30 years, but you managed to get a license.
A vanity plate.
Personalized, a vanity plate, right.
That's the first thing I would do if I came back every 30 years. But
I don't remember exactly if Duel, the Steven Spielberg, if it was a TV movie or a theatrical movie. I'm not sure. But I remember seeing it on TV, like probably as a kid. So maybe 10 years later, I would see it. Yeah.
In this film, the driver really goes unseen. So it's kind of like that Jaws. You don't see the scary thing for a long time. So the 1955 Peterbilt 281 tanker truck is really the villain here.
The bad guy, yeah.
Yeah. So the other driver is this mild-mannered electronics salesman by day. And so this is what he's up against. But in true Spielberg fashion, the film features some really terrific visuals, the dusty wilderness of the desert highway, evoking that sense of isolation, while you have these grill mounted camera views that really kind of thrusts you into the action sequences. So I have not seen this. I'm going to go back and watch this one for sure.
So there's a really great obscure Stephen King story that is so good about road rage. Such a great, it was never made. It's like there's so much internal dialogue happening in this. I don't think it could ever be adapted, but it's a really great story about a guy that gets cut off by a woman on the freeway. And so he starts, and clearly the guy is like a psychopath. Like he was waiting for this. Like, I think he may have even been provoking it, like trying to provoke a response from her. So then he's chasing her. And it's very clear from his internal dialogue that he's done this before. Like he has, he's caused people to wreck, and he gets off on it. Like it's an actual sexual thrill for him.
Yeah.
And
he's a sexual sadist.
He's a sexual sadist, and he's chasing her, and she is doing whatever evasive maneuvers she can. So she is driving. Now she gets off the main road, and then she gets off the residential road. And of course, everything takes place in rural Maine. So she's like now driving these logger roads, like, and she's just back and forth, and he's right on her tail. And then they're banking and going and up these like hairpin turns, and they're like, she takes a hard right turn and then slams on her brakes, which swerves her car around, and he can't brake, and he goes over a cliff. And then it switches from his perspective to her perspective, and she has an orgasm because she actually, she's a serial killer, and this is what she does. Is she gets guys to chase her.
And they found each other?
But one died. They could have had a perfect life together.
They could have. Wow. They could have just been spending gas money all over the place.
So if anybody out there is a Stephen King fan and you can find the name of that short story, let us know on social media, because I was trying to find it. I think it was like, I don't know if it was in one of his anthologies, like 4 After Midnight or something, but I'd love to dig that out again.
My mom might know. She's a huge Stephen King fan. Oh, you know who will know? Nick Amell from Tennis Pod will also know.
Oh, he absolutely will. Yeah. Yes.
And in the same theme, so when this comes out last weekend, I will have gone to Halloween Horror Nights, but I got a t-shirt, the red t-shirt that says Stephen King rules, to wear to it, that is from the movie Monster Squad
Oh,
from
right.
the 80s that the little boy is wearing. So I ordered that off Amazon to be my little outfit for the night.
Awesome.
Well, in closing, we want to leave you guys with some tips here. So I'm going to talk about how to deal with an angry driver if you are riding with this angry driver. And then Scott is just going to talk a little bit about what to do if you're targeted by someone in a road rage incident. So here's some advice. It comes from a couple of different areas. I think with most of these, we can agree, but you and I can talk about, just what we would add to this. If you're in the car with someone who's driving, who is clearly stimulated, activated by this, not stimulated in the way that the Stephen King story is saying they're stimulated, but activated and aggressive and perhaps even engaging in some of this behavior, don't criticize them or yell at them to relax or calm down. We know that doesn't work. Those will backfire on you. Another double entendre. Yourself, strive to just stay calm, speak with a soft voice. We know that we can influence people by kind of modeling behavior for them. And, more than telling them what to do, if you're calm, if you're talking in that way, that is going to be something that hopefully they catch on to as well. But start with something like, hey, I know you're frustrated. Maybe we can take some deep breaths together. Or even saying something like, look, I'm feeling really scared right now. And what that does is it lets them know. This is kind of like almost in couples therapy, Scott, where we tell people to use I statements, but then also put a feeling behind that. So I feel really scared when you fill in the blank, right? You don't start with like the finger pointing of when you do this, I feel this way. So if you start with you and how you're feeling, that really kind of knocks people's defenses down. And it tends to have them kind of open up to listen to what you're talking about. So, coming at them with that kind of communication, but also you can offer to take over driving, give your companion a chance to collect themselves while they're just kind of riding as a passenger. And, maybe save some of the deeper conversations about it for later when you're off the road and when emotions aren't as hijacked.
Great points. Going further, if you're targeted, you definitely do not want to respond to their aggression with your own aggression. That's a direct quote from these hints that we downloaded. You don't want to respond to their aggression with your aggression. That is gasoline on a fire.
Yeah.
Here's another one. It's interesting. Absolutely do not make eye contact and refrain from gesturing. If you show your frustration, it's going to escalate even more. Yeah. So I know that a lot of people out there are going to have reactions to this. Like, I get to say what I want to say. I get to make my own argument. We're talking about like de-escalating potentially dangerous situations. Mm-hmm. And this is what the stats show. So you can have your feelings about this. And I'm also not saying that any of us are perfect at it. I know some people, I'll say this. I know people who come from marginalized communities that I watch them in situations where they're being perpetrated upon with aggression and they never lose their shit. Yeah. And because they're used to it, which is sad and anger inducing, but it also is a lesson for me of like, wow, that what they did was they de-escalated that situation by basically just not participating. Mm-hmm. So I'm sure we're going to all have different feelings about this, but these are very important. If you're on a multi-lane road, just move out of the angry driver's way, turn off the road, go into a different direction, do not pull over, don't stop. That we now know is sending them a message to pull over and stop. That means they feel like they're going to be able to get out of the car and engage. There's a very famous reel right now on TikTok and on Facebook where people have taken and put it to music of this clearly frustrated middle-aged white guy driver, roided out of his mind, jumping out of a car and running to the window. It's being filmed by the driver of the other car. And he just starts pounding on the window. And people have like turned it into a whole musical thing with that being the drum bass. And but as funny as that is, that guy was willing to kill in that moment. He absolutely was willing to kill. And then his wife is desperately yanking him away, trying to yank him away. That could have been so bad if it had not stopped. If you do end up in a scenario where someone approaches your car, lock the doors, lay on the horn, and call 911. Do not get out of the car. The problem I have with that one, and I'm not disputing because I think these people have certainly a lot more expertise in this particular area than I do, is that laying on the horn definitely has the potential to increase aggression. However, you do need to attract the attention of whoever is around, including anybody that might be there with their phone to turn around and pull out their phone and film it, you know?
Yeah.
You should call 911 if you're being followed. Tell the dispatcher that you are experiencing someone who is aggressive, a road rage driver. They're following you. You and I went through this, I think, when I had just started working in downtown Los Angeles, and I accidentally cut somebody off on a residential street. Somebody in, you know, like sort of a cheaper car that had been modified so it was loud, and they had all their windows blacked out, and they followed me for 7 miles. Followed me for 7 miles. I was trying to get to the Hollywood police station where I knew I could at least drive up in front, and finally they gave up, I think because I had turned so many times, but I never got out of my car.
Yeah, definitely. Woo.
Yeah.
All right.
A lot, folks. We have a lot of research on this in our notes. I'm sure we'll be talking about an incident of this probably on a live stream soon, given how many incidents there are in Southern California. But keep your eyes open for our watch party coming up.
Do you want to tell everyone what our documentary review is going to be on? That will be next episode?
What did we decide on? Thin Blue Line?
Yeah, we're going to go old school.
Yeah, we should go old school. Thin Blue Line. It's a really great one. I wish it was actually talked about more. You know, it was so much part of the cultural zeitgeist for a good decade after it was made, and it's sort of slipped away. And I think it's a really important watch on so many levels because it's a fascinating story, but it talks about like how crappy eyewitness testimony is, and then also just like people's more base drives to get involved. You know, there's a very telling statement made by one of the quote unquote eyewitnesses early on in the film that really is telling about what happens.
There you go.
And it's one of those also, it's a documentary. They just turn on the camera and you basically watch the story unfold. Really well done.
The OG true crime documentary. So, all right, everyone, thank you so much. And we will see you next time on LA
Not So
Confidential. Bye-bye.
Bye, folks.
We sincerely thank you for spending some time with us today. LA Not So Confidential is part of the Crawlspace Media Network in partnership with Glassbox Media. Each episode is hosted, produced, and written by Dr. Scott and Dr. Shiloh. Our post-production editing and sweetening magic is handled by the multi-talented Jason Usry of Ear Cult Productions.
The LA Not So Confidential theme entitled Cool Vibes Film Noir is composed and performed by the talented Kevin MacLeod. He graciously allows us to use his music via a Creative Commons attribution license, and you can check out all of Kevin's amazing work on YouTube.
All of the resources for each episode can be found on our website at la-not-so-confidential.com. You can find us on Instagram at LA Not So Podcast, on Twitter at LA Not So Pod, and on Facebook at LA Not So Confidential. Media inquiries and bookings are scheduled at alienissentertainment@gmail.com.
Please join us each month on Saturdays at 4 p.m. Pacific Standard Time for a live streaming and very interactive broadcast on YouTube entitled Behind the Couch. Stay tuned to all of our social media for our live streaming scheduling announcements.
Subscribe to LA Not So Confidential so you never miss a new episode. And lastly, we'd be honored if you joined our Patreon at patreon.com/LA Not So Podcast. With a subscription, you get an ad-free listening experience, and you'll be the first notified about upcoming live events, social gatherings, and super cool swag coming your way.
Thanks for listening, and join in with us next time on LA
Not So
Confidential. Bye, folks.